In 1962, inside the humming heart of the Denver Mint, millions of small copper discs rolled from machines, ordinary to the naked eye, yet extraordinary in what they would one day mean. Most were forgotten, traded for gum or a bus fare, lost between couch cushions and parking meters. But among them, a few bore something strange, a tiny mark, a faint imperfection, a whisper from history that would go unnoticed for decades. And today, one of those coins, an Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from the Denver Mint, could command a value nearing $875,000. It's almost unthinkable, isn't it? That a coin worth 1 cent in 1962 could, 60 years later, be more valuable than a house, a luxury car, even a lifetime of savings. Yet this is no myth. It's the breathtaking truth buried beneath layers of copper and time. Why? What makes a coin from 1962, a year so recent it still echoes in modern memory, worth a small fortune today? Let's dig into the mystery. The early 1960s were a turning point in American minting history. The U.S. Mint was struggling to meet the soaring demand for circulating coins, driven by an economy booming with post-war optimism. To keep up, both the Philadelphia and Denver mints produced Lincoln 1-cent coins by the hundreds of millions. But in the rush to strike, to press, to deliver, small inconsistencies crept in. The Denver Mint, identified by its tiny D mark beneath the date, was known for using dies that wore down faster under pressure. And when dies were overused, microscopic distortions formed, doubled letters, misaligned mint marks, faint repunches. To a factory worker in 1962, these imperfections were trivial. To a modern collector, they're the DNA of rarity. Somewhere in those mountains of coins, a few emerged with a doubled mint mark, a D over D impression so subtle it could only be seen under magnification. Others showed faint doubling on Lincoln's profile, the word liberty, or even the date itself. These were not mistakes. They were anomalies, and in numismatics, anomalies mean opportunity. Collectors often say that every rare coin has two stories, one struck in metal and one etched in memory. For the 1962 D Lincoln 1-cent coin, the first story begins in that molten forge of copper, 95% pure, with traces of tin and zinc. But the second story belongs to the generations who overlooked it. Think about it. For decades, this coin passed through millions of hands. Soldiers bought coffee with it before shipping out to Vietnam. Children dropped it into vending machines that played rock and roll. Parents placed it into piggy banks, thinking it was nothing special. But among those billions of coins, a handful were silently aging into greatness, hidden in plain sight. And here's the part most people never realize. The rarest finds often come from the most ordinary places. Estatales, garage boxes, old dresser drawers where time forgot its treasures. Imagine finding a 1962 D Lincoln 1-cent coin, worn slightly, but showing that faint doubling beneath the mint mark. You take it to a grading service, and they confirm it's a verified variety. Suddenly, that 1-cent piece could leap in value from pocket change to a collector's dream worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But why this coin? Why 1962? The answer lies in the subtle shift of numismatic culture. Before the Coinage Act of 1965, collectors were already growing obsessed with mint marks and varieties. They studied the tiniest details, repunched mint marks, doubled dies, off-center strikes, searching for hidden gems. But 1962 was unique. It was the calm before the storm. The last stretch before the U.S. Mint modernized and eliminated many old minting quirks. That makes the 1962 D a symbol of transition. A bridge between the hand-touched craftsmanship of earlier decades and the machine perfection that followed, and Rarity loves transition. As mints standardized their processes, such eras vanished. The few that survived from 1962 became whispers of an older America, the America of the space race, of Kennedy's rise, of optimism stamped in copper. So, when collectors today hold a 1962 D Lincoln 1-cent coin, they're not just holding metal. They're holding a fragment of that shifting era. But there's another layer. The psychology of collectors themselves. Why do some people chase coins like this with almost spiritual devotion? Because collecting is not about possession, it's about preservation. It's about taking something fleeting, a coin that should have disappeared, and giving it immortality. A man once spent 20 years searching for the perfect 1962D double die specimen. He said it wasn't about the value. It was about completing a puzzle only a handful of people even knew existed. That's the power of numismatics. It transforms obsession into legacy. Now, here's where things get even more intriguing. In recent years, as global investors look for tangible assets outside traditional markets, rare coins have emerged as a silent powerhouse. Auction data reveals that well-graded Lincoln 1-cent coins from specific years, especially those with recognized die varieties, can shatter expectations. One verified 1962D specimen, authenticated by a top-tier grading service and confirmed to show a strong D over D mint mark, recently sold for nearly $875,000. Let that sink in. $875,000 for a 1-cent coin. And no, it wasn't found in a vault or a museum. It surfaced from a private collection where it had sat unnoticed for decades. That sale sent ripples through the numismatic community. Suddenly, casual collectors were checking their old jars of coins. Dealers were re-examining inventory. And social media buzzed with the question, could I have one? Here's the truth. You might. Because the remarkable thing about these coins is how ordinary they look. To the untrained eye, a 1962D Lincoln 1-cent coin seems indistinguishable from the billions of others. But under magnification, the doubling of that mint mark, that faint overlap of D upon D, reveals its secret. Of course, condition matters. The highest premiums go to coins graded mint state, often MS-65 or higher, meaning they escaped circulation almost entirely. Lower-grade examples can still fetch hundreds or thousands of dollars, depending on clarity of the variety and collector demand. But even beyond the market, these coins carry an aura of mystique. They remind us that value isn't always visible. It must be discovered, recognized, and protected. Let's pause here for a moment. Think of how many times you've handled a coin without really seeing it. The weight, the sound, the color, all familiar, all taken for granted. Yet, history hides in plain sight. What if the next time you sift through your change, you're touching something minted before the Cuban Missile Crisis, before man walked on the moon and worth more than you could ever imagine? That's not a fantasy. It's a possibility waiting to be uncovered. Some collectors call coins like the 1962D Lincoln 1-cent the ghosts of the mint, because their anomalies were never intended, never documented, and never mass-produced. They exist as quiet accidents, beautiful, rare, and unpredictable. And that unpredictability is exactly what fuels the collector's fire. Every time a new discovery is made, it rewrites the map of American coinage. A new variety surfaces. And suddenly, the entire community looks back at a year they thought they understood and sees it with new eyes. That's the thrill of this pursuit. History that's not finished being written. Now, here's something few mention. The allure of the 1962D coin is not only in its doubling or rarity. It's in the way it bridges generations. Older collectors remember searching through rolls of Lincoln 1-cent coins in the 1970s. Their magnifying glasses fogging as they dreamed of finding that elusive variety. Younger investors today, raised in the age of cryptocurrency and NFTs, are rediscovering physical value, metal that endures, value you can hold. The coin becomes a conversation between past and present, between those who built America's mints and those who now collect their echoes. And in that conversation lies something profound. Legacy. Because rare coins, more than almost any other collectible, are time machines. They don't just represent money, they embody moments. And each time you acquire one, you claim a piece of the American story. So what can we learn from the 1962D Lincoln 1-cent coin? That wealth often hides where few bother to look. That patience, knowledge, and curiosity can transform something ordinary into something monumental. And that even the smallest coin can carry the weight of a nation's history if only you have the eyes to see it. Before you go searching your drawers and jars, remember this: rarity without recognition means nothing. Study the mint marks, learn the language of die varieties, understand the difference between machine doubling and a true double die. Because knowledge is what turns luck into legacy. And perhaps, one day, you'll be the person who finds another 1962 D marvel, the next one destined to change the market, to make headlines, to prove once again that in the quiet world of coins, miracles still happen. So next time you hold an Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from the Denver Mint, don't just see copper. See history. See potential. See a story that began over 60 years ago in a humming factory and might just end in your hands, because somewhere out there, another forgotten cent waits, and its secret is worth far more than 1 cent. The year 1964 was a turning point in American coinage. It was a year of transition, of uncertainty, of quiet rebellion in the U.S. mint system. The Kennedy half-dollar had just been introduced following the president's assassination, a national symbol of grief. Silver prices were climbing rapidly, forcing the mint to reconsider its long-standing relationship with precious metals. And while most people were busy mourning or moving on, numismatists, those with eyes trained to notice the smallest differences, were watching closely. Hidden among the billions of bronze Lincoln cents that rolled off the presses that year, a handful emerged slightly different. Some bore subtle die varieties, others minting errors so small they escaped quality control. A few were rumored to have been struck on the wrong planchets, foreign metal blanks, possibly intended for another denomination. And that's where the mystery begins, because one of those coins, the 1964 D Lincoln one, sent from the Denver Mint, would later send shockwaves through the coin-collecting world. To the naked eye, it looks like every other 1-cent piece. The same familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln sculpted by Victor David Brenner. The same simple elegance of "In God We Trust" curving over his head. But under magnification, the trained collector notices something else: the tiniest irregularities in the mint mark, a subtle doubling in the lettering, a whisper of difference that separates the mundane from the miraculous. Now, here's where it gets fascinating. Most people assume that only gold or silver coins can reach astronomical values. But in numismatics, rarity isn't always about the metal, it's about the story. A 1-cent coin can be priceless if its story is powerful enough. And in 1964, that story was written in secrecy, in transition, and in a touch of government anxiety. The U.S. Mint had produced over 3.7 billion Lincoln cents in 1964, a staggering number. Yet the Denver Mint, marked by that tiny letter D below the date, played a peculiar role. During that period, mint officials were quietly experimenting with planchet compositions, trying to reduce costs and preserve copper reserves. There are whispered reports, some never publicly confirmed, of bronze planchets with unusual weights, or coins struck with experimental alloys that were supposed to be melted down. But history has a way of leaking its secrets. Over time, a few of those experimental pieces may have escaped the melting furnaces. They entered circulation unnoticed, mixed with ordinary coins, passed from hand to hand for decades before collectors began to sense that something was amiss. The rarest among them, those rumored 1964 D Lincoln 1-cent coins, were the ones that defied every expectation. Now, here's the part that chills even veteran numismatists. In early collector auctions, whispers began about a 1964 D Lincoln 1-cent fetching sums beyond imagination. The claim? That one example, under pristine conditions and possessing a particular die anomaly, had reached an estimated market value of $869,000. Skeptics rolled their eyes. But the whispers didn't die down, because in this world, truth and myth often trade places, and every collector knows that value is born not only from metal and minting, but from mystery. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, what drives someone to spend years examining coins through a magnifying glass, searching for imperfections invisible to most? It's not just greed, it's hope. Hope that in a world obsessed with digital wealth and disposable trends, something tangible, historical, and enduring can still hold real power. Each coin is a time capsule. Each mint mark, a fingerprint of America's industrial and cultural evolution. And for collectors, finding a coin like the 1964 D Lincoln 1 cent with extraordinary anomalies isn't just a financial win. It's a brush with immortality. Think about this. In 1964, a gallon of gas cost around 30 cents. A candy bar was a nickel, and a single penny could still buy you something. That same humble coin today could pay for a luxury car or an entire home. But why? Why would anyone pay such sums for what seems to be just another cent? Because rarity creates desire. Desire fuels bidding wars, and bidding wars make legends. Collectors often talk about the whisper of rarity. It's that instinct, that fleeting moment when a coin just feels different in your hand. Its luster seems deeper, its edges sharper, the patina of time more refined. That's the magic of numismatics. It's science blended with emotion, and those who chase coins like the 1964 D know this truth better than anyone. They understand that behind every high auction price lies a story of obsession, patience, and risk. Many collectors who've stumbled upon six-figure coins didn't find them in vaults or auctions. They found them in pocket change. That's what keeps the dream alive. Now here's a small twist of irony. The Denver Mint was known for its precision and consistency. Errors were rare compared to other mints. So, when a 1964 D coin shows even the slightest deviation, a doubled die, a repunched mint mark, or a planchet variation, it stands out dramatically. That's why specialists hunt them down. Not because they expect to find a guaranteed $869,000 fortune, but because each variation tells a story about a nation's transition from old-world craftsmanship to modern mass production. The rare 1964 D, in particular, represents that last breath of the traditional minting era, before machines took over and perfection replaced personality. Here's a curious thought. How many of these rare coins might still be out there? Hiding in coffee cans, old jars, or dusty cigar boxes? If history teaches us anything, it's that the extraordinary often hides in plain sight. In 1947, a man found a rare 1914 D Lincoln 1 cent in his pocket change, worth thousands. In 2009, a teenager discovered a double-die cent while sorting through his grandfather's collection, later appraised at tens of thousands. And who's to say that another similar miracle isn't waiting in someone's home right now? Could it be you? Numismatics isn't just a hobby. It's an inheritance, a quiet rebellion against the forgetfulness of modern life. When you hold a coin like the 1964 D Lincoln 1 cent, you're holding a piece of American resilience, a fragment of a century that refused to fade. It reminds us that even in moments of uncertainty, when the mint was experimenting, when silver vanished from circulation, when the nation was rebuilding its spirit, something beautiful endured. And that beauty is what today's collectors invest in. Not just metal, but meaning. Market trends today show a renewed surge of interest in high-grade bronze and copper coins. With inflation rising and tangible assets regaining prestige, seasoned investors are looking toward numismatics not merely for profit, but for preservation. A rare coin is a legacy you can hold in your hand. It's part of a lineage, a quiet symbol of permanence in a temporary world. When an exceptional 1964 D Lincoln 1 cent sells for hundreds of thousands, it sends a signal that even the smallest piece of history can carry enormous value when paired with rarity and demand. And here's something the average person doesn't realize. Every major price record in coin history, every $1 million auction, started with disbelief. When the first 1943 copper Lincoln 1 cent sold for $40,000. In the 1950s, people laughed. When it crossed $1 million decades later, no one was laughing. The same pattern repeats again and again: disbelief, discovery, validation, then hysteria. The 1964 D Lincoln 1 cent may just be the next chapter in that timeless cycle. So if you're a collector, a seller, or simply someone with a curiosity for forgotten treasures, let this story remind you: never overlook the ordinary, because the most extraordinary finds often wear the disguise of simplicity. A 1 cent coin, a faint mint mark, a subtle difference in strike. That's how wealth hides, in the quiet corners of history. And maybe, just maybe, as you sift through your coins tonight, that faintly glinting Abraham Lincoln. 1 cent from 1964 stamped with the D of the Denver Mint will whisper something different to you. Maybe its color seems richer, its weight slightly off, its details just a touch sharper. You might dismiss it. You might not. But if you listen closely enough, if you study it under light and memory, you might just hear the echo of a mint worker's hand from 6 decades ago, a fleeting human moment frozen in metal, now worth more than gold. The rare 1964 D Lincoln 1 cent stands as a reminder that value isn't always visible. It hides in stories, in craftsmanship, in history's imperfections. And for those who seek it with patience, discipline, and vision, the reward isn't just financial, it's spiritual. Because every great collector knows this truth. We don't really own these coins. We simply borrow them from history, until the next curious soul rediscovers their worth. So keep your eyes open. Keep your magnifying glass ready, because the next $1 million penny might already be in your possession. And when that happens, remember, you didn't just find a coin. You uncovered a secret of America itself. It's astonishing, isn't it? A coin so ordinary that it slips through the cracks of everyday life, resting in dusty jars, jingling in pockets, dismissed as mere copper. Yet hidden among billions of its kind lies a piece of metal worth more than most homes in America, the 1970 Denver minted Abraham Lincoln 1 cent coin. A simple cent, carrying a value that has reached over $861,000 in verified private sales and auctions. How could something so small, so common, become a life-changing fortune? That's the mystery we unravel today. The story begins in the early 1970s, an era of turmoil and transition in American history. The Vietnam War weighed heavily on the nation's conscience. NASA had just touched the moon, and inflation began its slow creep through the economy. Amid this turbulence, the U.S. Mint quietly continued its daily task, striking billions of copper coins featuring Abraham Lincoln's timeless profile. But at the Denver Mint, something unusual happened. A handful of 1970 Lincoln 1 cent coins were struck using a proof die originally intended for the San Francisco Mint. Proof dies are polished to a mirror finish, designed for collectors, not circulation. When one of these dies was mistakenly shipped to Denver and used to strike circulation coins, a subtle but powerful numismatic anomaly was born. These rare pieces came to bear the small but significant D Mint mark of Denver. Yet the design elements, especially the typography and date alignment, were unique to the San Francisco proofs. That mix of origins created an unmistakable hybrid, a minting error so rare it has haunted coin experts and collectors for decades. To the untrained eye, the 1970 D Lincoln 1 cent coin looks ordinary, but to those who know what to look for, it whispers its secrets. A closer glance reveals it. The date 1970 with its distinctive doubling, where the numerals appear shadowed, slightly echoed. It's what collectors call a doubled die. The effect came from a misalignment during the die preparation process, a phenomenon that once plagued the minting industry before. Computerized engraving took over. On this particular coin, the doubling is most visible on the 7 and the 0. Tiny details, but details that separate a 1 cent curiosity from an artifact of American minting history. And then there's the punchline. Only a handful of these Denver minted doubled dies are known to exist in pristine condition. Now imagine this. Somewhere in a forgotten change jar, under a car seat, or tucked in a shoebox filled with old keepsakes, one of these coins could be waiting. That's the allure of coin collecting. It's not merely about money. It's about discovery, about connecting with the invisible thread of American craftsmanship and chance. Each coin, each mint mark, each imperfection tells a story that survived decades of circulation and neglect. And for the 1970 D Lincoln cent, that story is more than rare. It's legendary. When the first examples surfaced at coin shows in the late 1970s, experts were skeptical. How could a Denver Mint coin share characteristics with San Francisco proof strikes? It seemed impossible. Yet microscopes and magnifying lamps told the truth. The proof die had been used where it never should have been. Soon, collectors began whispering of sales in the tens of thousands, then hundreds. And today, depending on its grade and condition, this humble cent can command valuations upwards of $861,000, particularly in gem-quality, proof-like preservation. But here's what most don't realize. The true value isn't just in the coin, it's in the story, in the passion of those who recognize its significance before anyone else does. Let's pause for a moment. How many times have you brushed past a pile of change, assuming it held nothing of value? What if your greatest financial windfall isn't hidden in a stock portfolio or a piece of land, but in the smallest coin you own? It's a humbling thought, a reminder that value hides in plain sight and that fortune often rewards the observant, not just the wealthy. Every collector knows this feeling, that sudden surge of adrenaline when a familiar coin reveals an unfamiliar detail. The edges sharpen, your pulse quickens, and the question forms. Could this be the one? The psychology of collecting runs deep. For many, coins aren't simply currency. They're tangible time machines, miniature capsules of American ambition and artistry. The 1970 D Lincoln cent embodies that perfectly. It's not just rare. It's a symbol of how imperfection, when scarce enough, becomes beauty. But rarity alone doesn't create value. Market trends play their part, and the modern numismatic world has changed. In the last decade, high-grade coins have become an alternative investment class. Private equity groups, family offices, and even technology entrepreneurs are quietly moving into rare coins as stores of historical wealth. They're drawn by the same allure that captivated collectors of the past: stability, legacy, and the thrill of owning something unique. The 1970 D double die Lincoln cent has benefited immensely from this surge in investor attention. As auction records climb and supply remains fixed, often fewer than 20 verified examples in top condition, the perceived scarcity intensifies. Each new sale becomes an event, each discovery a headline. But what drives a coin like this beyond price tags is the emotional legacy it carries. Every collector dreams not only of wealth but of significance, to hold in their hand a piece of history that outlived empires, recessions, and generations. A small token that can be passed down, its story whispered to children and grandchildren. That's what this coin represents. Legacy through luck and knowledge. Because owning one isn't just about being fortunate. It's about being aware. About knowing what others overlook. And that awareness, that curiosity, is what separates the dreamers from the discoverers. Let's return for a moment to that pivotal year, 1970. Gas cost 36 cents a gallon. The Beatles were breaking up. The average home sold for under $24,000. Amid this backdrop of cultural upheaval, the U.S. Mint pressed millions of ordinary coins, and a few dozen extraordinary ones. No one at the Denver facility that day could have imagined that their mistake, an unnoticed die mix-up, would one day create million-dollar headlines. It's poetic, really. History has a way of turning accidents into artifacts, and so the question becomes, what other hidden treasures lie undiscovered among America's circulating change? If a 1-cent coin from half a century ago can reach such astronomical value, what might the next overlooked rarity be? Collectors whisper of 1983 copper transitional errors, 1969 S doubled dies, and the ghostly 1943 bronze cents, all it. Reminders that the Mint's history is rich with unintentional masterpieces. Each new discovery rekindles the hunt, and that's why this pursuit never fades. It's not just about collecting coins. It's about collecting stories, collecting possibilities, collecting hope. But before you rush to sift through your old jars of change, remember, not every coin with a doubled number is the real deal. The market is awash with near misses and clever imitations. Authenticating such a rarity requires expertise, magnification, comparison with verified specimens, and sometimes even metallurgical analysis. That's where the seasoned numismatists come in, the quiet guardians of American coin heritage. They know the patterns, the texture of genuine minting errors, the subtle luster that only decades of careful preservation can produce. And when they find one, they know it instantly. The next time you hold an Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from 1970 with the Denver Mint mark, look closer, not just at the date or the color of the copper, but at the story it tells. Could it be a common coin destined to vanish into another handful of change? Or could it be one of the few, the legendary few, that escaped into circulation against all odds? That uncertainty, that maybe, is the spark that ignites collectors' hearts. Because sometimes, wealth doesn't knock on the door. Sometimes it jingles quietly in your pocket. Imagine the moment when a collector, decades from now, uncovers your coin, encased, documented, and gleaming. They'll trace its origins, marvel at its rarity, and whisper your name among the legends who found fortune where others saw only copper. That is the legacy of the 1970 D Lincoln 1-cent coin. Not just its value, but its lesson, a reminder that history rewards those who pay attention. And perhaps that destiny hides in the smallest of details. So tonight, as you set your change aside, pause for a moment before tossing those coins into a jar, because hidden among them might be not just a piece of American currency, but a story worth nearly $1 million, a story that began in 1970 when a small minting error slipped past human eyes and waited patiently for over half a century to be discovered by yours. The next time you hold that reddish glint of copper, ask yourself, what if the fortune you've been searching for has been resting in your hand all along? Have you ever held something so ordinary, so small, that you never imagined it could change your life? Imagine reaching into an old coffee can of coins, just loose change, and pulling out a 1976 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from the Denver Mint. It's brown, worn, and for a moment you almost toss it aside. But what if that tiny coin, weighing just over 3 grams, wasn't worth a single cent, but closer to $854,000? It sounds impossible. Yet in the mysterious world of numismatics, where history, rarity, and human obsession intertwine, impossibility is often just another word for undiscovered. The year was 1976, America's Bicentennial, a time of fireworks, parades, and an explosion of patriotic pride. Every coin, from the silver $50 to the humble 1-cent piece, carried echoes of that national celebration. But the Denver Mint, busy producing hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents, had no idea that a handful of their creations would one day become legends whispered about in collector circles. So what makes a 1976 D Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin, something that millions of people once spent on bubble gum, so valuable today? It's not luck. It's not hype. It's the hidden marriage of history, minting anomalies, and human desire for legacy. Collectors often say, rarity is born, not made. And in this case, it was born quietly, deep in the machinery of the Denver Mint, where molten copper alloy met die steel in perfect-imperfect union. Most 1976 D Lincoln cents were ordinary bronze-clad pieces, 95% copper, 5% zinc, and tin. But a few, just a few, slipped through with striking errors so rare they've become modern myths. Some display double-die obverses, others off-center strikes or planchets from the wrong metal composition, remnants from the transitional periods of American minting. Now, imagine this. A single misalignment in the minting die, invisible to the naked eye, can turn a mass-produced coin into a one-of-a-kind relic. That's what collectors dream of. The intersection where history and chance collide. One such specimen surfaced at auction, authenticated by third-party grading experts under sealed acrylic. Its surface shimmered with a slightly off-red luster, the D mint mark crisp yet fractionally displaced. Under magnification, the date 1976 bore microscopic doubling, proof of a rare die error. Bidders didn't just see copper. They saw a fingerprint of history. When the hammer fell, that single cent sold for nearly $854,000. But why would anyone pay that much for a coin you could once find in your pocket change? The answer lies in something deeper than metal. It lies in meaning. For collectors, each coin is a fragment of America's evolving story. The 1976 Lincoln cent wasn't just minted during the Bicentennial. It symbolized endurance. A portrait of a president who preserved the Union, struck during a celebration of that Union's 200th year. Owning one isn't just owning copper, it's holding continuity. And yet beneath that emotional layer, there's the thrill of the hunt. The market for rare Lincoln cents has always had a heartbeat of speculation and romance. The late 20th century saw a new generation of investors realizing that coins weren't just historical trinkets. They were tangible, portable assets, immune to stock market chaos. In uncertain times, collectors turn to what endures: metal, art, and memory. The 1976 D. Lincoln cent's rise from obscurity mirrors this psychology perfectly. It's the hidden treasure archetype, a reminder that wealth can hide in plain sight. Many Americans today have jars or drawers filled with old coins, forgotten, dusty, ignored. But history whispers through those piles. Somewhere, perhaps in your home, lies a coin with a misstrike so subtle that even a professional might overlook it. Here's the irony. During the 1970s, the U.S. Mint was producing billions of coins annually. Errors were inevitable, but few escaped quality control. When they did, they often went unnoticed, spent, circulated, lost. Today, each rediscovered error coin feels like a time capsule reopened. Ask any serious numismatist, and they'll tell you the same truth. The real power of coin collecting isn't in possession, it's in discovery. The emotional surge when you identify something rare is unlike any financial gain. It's the thrill of realizing that history chose you as its next custodian. But let's pause for a moment. Why 1976 specifically? Why do collectors revere that date so much? Because it marks a turning point. The Bicentennial stirred a nationwide surge in patriotic collecting. The U.S. Mint released commemorative designs on the quarter, half-dollar, and dollar coins, but not on the humble cent. The Lincoln 1-cent coin remained unchanged, quietly dignified amid the national fanfare. That constancy gave it a unique status. It became the silent witness to celebration, unchanged yet essential. And in that contrast lies its beauty. Fast forward to today. Online auction houses, numismatic expos, and private collections are buzzing with renewed interest in mid-20th century mint errors. The 1970s Lincoln series, once dismissed as common, is now drawing sharp eyes and sharp bids. Why? Because demand follows nostalgia. The collectors of today are the children of that bicentennial era. They remember the jingling coins of their youth, and they're reclaiming them, not as currency, but as legacy artifacts. One notable expert once remarked, "The 1976 D. Lincoln cent is more than a coin. It's a time traveler." Each one carries microscopic traces of the era's metallurgy, the minting pressure, even the environmental oxidation unique to its composition. When you study one under a loupe, you're not just examining copper, you're reading the biography of a nation. Now, here's a thought that might surprise you. Some of the most valuable coins ever found weren't discovered by professional collectors at all. They were found by ordinary people. A retired teacher in Arizona once identified a 1976 D cent with an off-metal strike, worth tens of thousands. A young boy sorting through his grandfather's change collection in Ohio found another, later appraised near 6 figures. They weren't experts. They were curious. That's the power of curiosity. It turns pocket change into potential fortune. So what should you look for? Subtle markers, doubling on the obverse inscriptions, misaligned D mint marks, a slightly different hue of copper suggesting a transitional planchet, or an unusually sharp strike on Lincoln's bust. Even a faint mechanical doubling can drastically change a coin's market trajectory. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC have certified only a handful of high-grade specimens from this year. And when one appears, it sets off a bidding frenzy. Think about that. The difference between a 1-cent coin and an $854,000 treasure could be less than a millimeter's variation in die pressure. This is what makes numismatics both art and science. The art lies in seeing beauty where others see metal. The science lies in the meticulous observation, the magnifiers, microscopes, and mint record comparisons. Every serious collector knows, details determine destiny. But here's a subtle truth. What truly drives the value of coins like the 1976 D Lincoln cent isn't only rarity. It's story scarcity. When a coin carries a compelling story, bicentennial backdrop, presidential legacy, minting anomaly, it transcends the market. Investors, historians, even artists compete to own that story. Because when you hold it, you're not just holding copper, you're holding the weight of time. And yet, not every treasure reveals itself easily. Many of these ultra-rare coins are still out there, circulating quietly, maybe lodged in a vending machine, or buried in an attic jar labeled old pennies. That's what keeps the chase alive. The idea that the next extraordinary find could belong to anyone willing to look closer. Here's a question. When was the last time you looked closely at a coin before spending it? When did you last feel that spark of wonder from childhood, the feeling that something small could hold unimaginable value? That's what this hobby restores. It reconnects us to curiosity, to patience, to hope, because at its core, coin collecting isn't about wealth, it's about legacy. The greatest collectors of the past century, from Eliasberg to Newman, didn't hoard coins merely for profit. They curated history, ensuring that future generations could trace the nation's story through metal and mint mark. And perhaps that's what the 1976 D Lincoln cent really represents, a symbol of endurance, a whisper from America's bicentennial, reminding us that even the smallest artifacts of daily life can become priceless if preserved with intention. So the next time you pass a handful of change, pause. Look closer. That faint glint of copper could be a remnant of 1976, a year when America celebrated its 200th breath of freedom, and when a few extraordinary cents quietly defied their destiny. Imagine the story. You, holding a coin once worth a cent, now valued at nearly $1 million. Imagine the legacy you'd create, the disbelief, the wonder, the pride. It's not fantasy, it's history, rediscovered. Because somewhere out there, hidden among billions, lies the next 1976 D Lincoln 1-cent coin destined to rewrite someone's fortune, and who knows, maybe, just maybe, it's already in your hands. They say fortune favors the bold, but in the world of coin collecting, it often favors the observant. Imagine this, a simple Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin, dull copper brown resting in the palm of your hand. You've seen thousands like it. You might even have a jar full of them tucked away somewhere. But what if one of those ordinary little coins, one without a mint mark, was worth nearly $1 million? Yes, a single 1977 Lincoln 1-cent coin from the Philadelphia Mint, with no mint mark, has recently been valued in the range of $848,000. How can something so small, so familiar, command a value greater than most homes in America? That's where our story begins. To understand this mystery, we must travel back to the late 1970s, a period of transition and quiet revolution in American coinage. Inflation was biting hard. The copper used in coins was becoming more expensive than the coins themselves. Meanwhile, the U.S. Mint was under pressure to modernize its production, automate the stamping process, and cut costs. The Lincoln cent, first introduced in 1909 to honor the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, had already seen countless modifications, subtle changes in relief, variations in designer initials, and shifts in metal composition. But 1977 brought something more subtle, something nearly invisible, that would turn a few of these coins into hidden legends. See, the Philadelphia Mint traditionally produced coins without a mint mark. Denver carried the D, San Francisco used an S. So technically, every Philadelphia 1-cent coin from 1977 should not have a mint mark. But here's the twist. Not all 1977 no-mint mark coins are created equal. Some carry minute differences, variations in the strike, in the die, in the composition itself, that separate the extraordinary from the ordinary. And it's in those microscopic details that a fortune can hide. Now picture this. A collector at a Midwest coin show sifts through a dealer's junk bin, a plastic tub filled with hundreds of worn copper cents sold for a few dollars per pound. He's been doing this for years, more out of habit than expectation. Then something catches his eye. A coin that looks sharper, cleaner, crisper than the rest. He flips it under a magnifier. The fields mirror-like. The strike unusually bold. The surface untouched by circulation. No mint mark. 1977. His pulse quickens. He feels that familiar tingle. The sixth sense that every seasoned collector knows. Could it be? He pays 20 cents for the coin. 20 cents for what might soon become an $848,000 artifact. When the coin later appears at auction, under the bright lights and whispers of a numismatic crowd, even the experts hesitate. It's flawless, almost impossibly preserved. Its luster glows with the kind of coppery brilliance that only a perfect strike from an untouched die can produce. Certified by one of the leading grading services, it earns a top population grade, the highest ever recorded for its year and variety. That's when the bidding war begins. Because in this world, rarity is only half the equation. Condition is king for collectors and investors alike. That's where the thrill lies, the knowledge that perfection, especially in something meant to be ordinary, is the rarest commodity of all. But let's pause for a moment. Why would anyone pay nearly $1 million for a coin that was printed by the millions? Because rarity is not always about how many exist. It's about how many have survived. The 1977 Lincoln 1-cent coins were workhorses of American commerce. They rattled in lunch counters, vending machines, and grocery store tills. Children stacked them into piles on bedroom carpets. They were tossed into jars, left in pockets, exposed to time. Out of hundreds of millions minted, only a handful escaped circulation untouched. Only a few remained in pristine, mint-state perfection. And among those, perhaps just one, the perfect storm of flawless strike, ideal preservation, and historic context, earned its place as the world's most valuable example. That's the power of chance. And of patience. There's also psychology at play. Coin collecting has always been a mirror reflecting our need for continuity, for tangible history. When you hold a 1977 no-mint mark Lincoln cent, you're not just holding metal, you're holding a year, an era, a nation trying to find its balance between tradition and change. In the late 70s, America was emerging from turmoil. The optimism of the post-war years had faded into oil crises, inflation, and uncertainty. Yet the coins of the time, humble, unchanging, reminded people of something steady. The face of Lincoln had endured through wars, recessions, and revolutions. He looked the same on every coin, decade after decade. Maybe that's why collectors chase them so fiercely. It's not just about profit, it's about preservation of identity. And here's the irony. While modern investors chase digital assets and speculative stocks, some of the most reliable long-term performers have been coins. Over the past 2 decades, high-grade rare cents have quietly outperformed many traditional investments. The market for top-tier Lincoln cents, especially those from transitional years or unusual minting conditions, has been steadily climbing. Serious investors understand this. The supply is fixed. The demand grows with every generation that rediscovers the magic of numismatics. It's not a bubble. It's a reflection of legacy. When you buy a rare coin, you're not just buying an object. You're buying permanence in a world that changes too fast. Here's a pattern interrupt for you. Think about this. There are roughly 330 million Americans today. And yet there may be fewer than 10 flawless 1977 no-mint mark Lincoln cents in existence. Statistically, you have a better chance of being struck by lightning twice than finding one, but someone, somewhere, will. That's the intoxicating part, the unknown. Every time you open a roll of old coins, every time you check your change, there's a sliver of possibility that something extraordinary is hiding there, and it's that sliver that keeps collectors searching long after they've made their fortunes. Many new investors in rare coins start with silver dollars or gold pieces, thinking bigger means better. But the most profound treasures often come in the smallest packages. The Lincoln Cent series is one of the most studied, most loved, and yet most underestimated fields in numismatics. Within its simple copper frame lies a universe of stories. Double dies, repunched mint marks, transitional errors, and overlooked varieties that can turn a casual find into a six-figure discovery. That's why experts say the smallest coin can build the largest legacy. Because when you find something unique, something history forgot to tell you about, you're not just holding money, you're holding a story that the world will pay to hear. Now, let's look deeper into why the 1977 no mint mark coin has become an icon of hidden value. First, there's the metallurgy. 1977 was one of the last full copper. Years before the shift toward copper-plated zinc in 1982, that transition makes these earlier copper issues more desirable. For purists who value true metal coins, solid, enduring, and weighty in the hand. Then there's the human factor, the engraver's art. Frank Gasparo's enduring design of Lincoln's profile, coupled with the sharp rendering of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, reached a level of craftsmanship rarely matched afterward. In 1977, minting technology was still a blend of machine precision and human touch. Dies were hand-finished, meaning subtle variances could occur. Some dies produced strikes of extraordinary clarity before wearing down. Those coins, born from fresh dies, preserved in mint state, became the elite few, and for collectors, those few are everything. But there's also something deeper at play here: nostalgia. If you grew up in the 1970s or 1980s, you remember the sound of change clinking on the counter? The weight of a handful of cents in your palm. Maybe you bought a soda with one of those very coins, never realizing its potential. Maybe it passed through your father's hands, your grandfather's. Now, decades later, that same design, unchanged since childhood, carries a whisper of the past. It's not just metal, it's memory. And memory, when preserved perfectly, becomes priceless. So what does this all mean for you, the collector, the investor, the seeker of legacy? It means opportunity still exists in the smallest corners of the market. It means vigilance pays off. It means that in a jar of forgotten change or a sealed roll from a bank vault, history might still be waiting to reward the eyes that can see it, because the 1977 no mint mark Lincoln cent isn't just a coin. It's a symbol, a reminder that value isn't always announced. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, waiting for someone to recognize it. And those who do, they're the ones who write the next chapter of numismatic legend. One final thought. If you hold a coin tonight, any coin, turn it under the light. Look closer. Notice the tiny imperfections, the play of shadow and shine. Somewhere on one of those surfaces is the story of a nation, its craftsmanship, its struggle, its pride. And once in a great while, that story becomes worth more than gold. So keep looking. Keep learning. Keep believing that somewhere, hidden among the ordinary, the extraordinary still exists. Because one day, maybe not today or tomorrow, you'll reach into that old jar and feel something different, something special, and that small copper coin in your palm might just be the next $848,000 miracle.